예전 디스틸러 매니저의 집이었다는 올드하우스로 이동했다. 여기는 현재 증류소 방문객들을 위한 스페셜 프로그램으로 샘플룸과 응접실, 디스틸러 매니저의 방으로 구성된 공간으로 사용된다.
Here we go. We can.
Wow, beautiful
we can
place.
have a little look in here. So, this particular room, this is set out for what we call the Malt Master Tour. This is where people that visit the distillery can make their own little bottle of whiskey. So this little bottle of whiskey is made up by using these 5 different casks. Now these casks have never gone to bottling.
Yes.
They never will go to bottling unless you do this little tour. So this is a very, very popular tour at Glengoyne, and we have the numbered casks, and these are all cask strength because no water has been added here. Yeah, and we always have a worksheet that tells you all about the particular whiskies that you're working with, the different casks, the age of the cask, and the construction of that cask. The cabinets here, these are the private cask owners. You can see a little row of bottles, maybe 6 or 7 bottles in a row. These are each year. Each year. We will leave the whiskey for 3 years. We will then begin to draw a sample after 3 years. So our cask owners, they can come along, we can sit with them, we can try the whiskey, and yeah. So this is what we term as the sample room. So there's some fantastic old whiskies. Look at the colour of that. Just
It's
absolutely
really beautiful.
Oh,
the European sherry oak.
That's a fantastic smell of that whiskey.
Can I try it?
Yes, absolutely.
It's really nice.
Are you able to have a whiskey today? Are you able to try a whiskey today?
Yes,
Yeah.
sure.
I'm going to pour you a little whiskey. We'll take it up to the boardroom. There is one in particular, and we'll go up and see Robbie. I would like you to try.
그리고 위층으로 이동해 드디어 마스터 디스틸러를 만났다.
Oh, thank you.
서울에서 준비해간 작은 선물을 건네고 마스터 디스틸러 인터뷰를 시작했다.
Oh, Glengoyne's in there too.
Yes, of course.
I need to get somebody to read it to me.
Anyway.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Okay. This is your first book. Why did you write a book about whiskey? Is it something you've been passionate about, or?
Because it was 2 years ago, the book.
Right.
At that time, there's no book in the Korea about the whiskey essay, about the casual story about the whiskey, how to enjoy the whiskey. So I'm really like to enjoy whiskey, but there's no people to enjoy the culture about the whiskey. So that's why I wrote my story.
Okay.
But nowadays I prepare about the next story of this book. So it's covered by more specific about the whiskey, distilleries, and the bar stories. So that's why I came here today.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, thank you.
Yes. And also the painting is also from me.
Oh, this one here.
Yes, and also inside many.
All right, so the wee.
Yeah.
Okay.
And also this is for you.
Thank you.
Yes, the cigar from Davidoff, and also it's only Korea edition.
Right. Okay. Well, lovely. Well, thank you very much.
I heard you work from since 2003.
I've been here for 2003.
Yeah, so it's gonna be 20 anniversary from here.
Next year.
Next year.
Next
Yes.
year. Yeah.
Do you have any special event? Not really.
No. I don't think so. It's 20 years. It's not that long a time. It's the longest I've worked in a distillery, because I've been working in distillery since I was 18.
18.
18, yeah. And you sound surprised. That makes me feel very old when you said 18. Yeah, so I've been working it since I was 18, and Glengoyne, I think it was my 12th or 13th distillery I've worked at. So I've worked at a lot of distilleries, because I used to work with Diageo,
Diageo.
and I used to work with another company called Allied Distillers.
Yeah.
Hughes took over them, and then before that I worked with another company called Hiram Walker, which is a Canadian company. So yeah, since I was 18, and I've worked around a lot of distilleries, but Glengoyne is the one I've been at the longest.
But I think even though 20 years is really long time to
In whiskey distilleries, not so much.
Not that.
No, I think probably in many other industries, 20 years is way. I mean, a lot of people just stay in a job for maybe 3 or 4 years, then they move. But I've known people who've worked at the same site for almost 40 years. At the same distillery, 4 years. There's some people who start when they're 16, 17 in the distillery, and they retire at 65 in the same distillery. So almost 50 years.
Okay.
Yeah. So no, this isn't unusual. So no, I don't think there'll be a party.
Okay.
No.
For a little bit about the before the career from Glengoyne, you worked at Diageo and many kinds of distillery. But why you choose the Glengoyne at that time, 2003?
I chose Glengoyne because I was ready for Glengoyne. It's because I always worked at bigger companies, and when you work at bigger companies, you get a lot of support. So if there's ever a problem, so if you're working for, say, Diageo or Allied or Chivas, if you ever had a problem at the distillery, you could pick up a phone and you could ask somebody for advice, because they're big. There's always somebody there who could help. Whereas Glengoyne, back then, Ian MacLeod Distillers had only just purchased Glengoyne. They purchased Glengoyne in 2003, so they had no experience of making whiskey. They'd never run a whiskey distillery before. So when this site came up as for a distillery manager, I actually thought that would be a good challenge, because at that stage I've been working about 19 years in whiskey distilleries, and I thought this would be an opportunity for a young man to run a really good whiskey distillery with an excellent product, pretty much on my own, because there'll be very little support. There was good support around things like, financial advice, business advice. There's all those kinds of good support there within the business, but around actual making whiskey, nothing. And I thought that challenge or opportunity will probably not come again. So I could have either stayed with Diageo, and Diageo were a great company. I enjoyed working with Diageo, but no, I thought I was young, my family were very young, so I thought this is a good time to move. Big challenge, good time to do it and see if I could do it, and I've enjoyed it, and it's worked out really well. I never regretted it for a second.
And also, what made get into the whiskey industry?
Why? I was
just naturally?
No, it wasn't natural. It was I when I left school, I trained to be a welder, a weldress, so making oil rigs. Oil rigs, so doing welding. So so I trained to do that, but then I became unemployed. So when I was just turned 18, so I had no work, and my father just happened to come home one night, and he told me that there was a job vacancy at Balblair Distillery. Balblair, yeah. So he said the manager is expecting you to go and see him tomorrow morning. So my father arranged for me to go and speak to the manager, a guy called Jimmy Yates.
He's a friend of your father.
He just happened to meet him in the pub.
Oh.
So they're in the pub having a drink,
Oh.
and I think they just got talking, and Jimmy, the manager, told my father that there's a vacancy at Balblair for rolling barrels. And then my dad's thought, well, okay, he needs a job. I'll send him to come and see you in the morning. So I went down and saw Jimmy the next day. I had a 5-minute, that's all, just a 5-minute interview. And I started, I think maybe a week. I started on October the 1st, 1984. So 38 years.
Wow.
Yeah, that's 38 years last week. So yeah, so it wasn't a calling. I didn't have this ambition.
I think it's kind of calling.
It is now. It is now. But I didn't leave school thinking I wanted to work in the whiskey distillery. No, but when I did start working in the whiskey distillery, it was good. It was so much fun.
So it is easy to understand drink Balblair. It's connected here, the Glengoyne. I mean I want to understand of your whiskey style. So is it helpful to drink Balblair also, or not really?
Well, they're all different.
Oh.
You know, I mean, Balblair is further north. It's it's slightly heavier. It's a beautiful whiskey as well. But where Glengoyne's kind of a little bit lighter. It's fruitier, going through. I mean, all the whiskies distilleries I've worked at have all been different. You know, they've all got different nuances from each other, and that's why single malts are great, because if they were all the same, you would just call it vodka. Because you know, I can't tell the difference from my wife can, but to me, vodka's vodka. But whiskey, you can tell the subtleties, the differences. So Balblair is different to Glengoyne. The way they produce it is different to Glengoyne. As you did the tour, when you went around the tour, it was explained just how slow our distillation is. So we've got very, very slow distillation.
Yes.
It's the slowest that I've ever worked with.
Oh.
Very, very slow. And that's just so you get the right amount of congeners, the amount of flavours going over the neck of the still.
So the slow time makes more fragrance.
What it does, it removes, it means the alcohol has more time in with the copper. So when it's actually turned into distillate, it travels slowly over rather than pushed.
Oh.
So that slow, it means the heavier flavours then drop back. And as they drop back, they then meet lighter flavours going up, and they kind of interchange. So they strip. So as it's going down, it strips some of the heavier from the lighter as well. So it's way it works, and it's just very special here at Glengoyne.
That's why the Glengoyne, the flavor is really of the fruity and also fruity.
Yeah, and you can, even in this glass, you just get a lot of fruity notes, and that whiskey's probably about, I think it's about 12, 14 years old. But it's still, even after those years, you can still get the fruity notes coming through. When we make the new make, we're looking for the flavours, or the smell is green apples. Green apples. And there's also another smell. So green apples is the primary, and then underneath that we're looking for leather. New leather. So if you've got maybe a new leather watch strap or a jacket, so that's kind of, but mainly fruity. And then even after all these years, the green apples becomes more red, ripe, rich apples coming through. And that's something that's very rare, but Glengoyne does that very well.
Got it. What was the first malt you had?
Would be Balblair.
Balblair.
It was Balblair.
So before Balblair, you are not really interested in.
Before I was Balblair, I was 18. Nobody drinks single malt whiskey at 18. No, it's back then. it would have been vodka. I was drinking vodka and maybe Coca-Cola or vodka and orange or whatever. But then when I was 18 and started working at Balblair, then I had my first taste, you know, and to be honest, I didn't really like it that much. It's just, when you're young, you like sweet things, but it's, you know, when you get a little bit older, I was probably about maybe 22 years old, then I started appreciating, you know, single malt whiskies and haven't looked back. enjoyed every one.
Yes, of course.
여행의 끝 위스키. 다음 편에서는 마스터 디스틸러와 함께 글렌고인 생산 과정에 대해서 조금 더 이야기를 나누도록 한다.